Let's talk about a country that honestly shouldn't exist. It's this tiny, doubly landlocked nation tucked away in the Alps. It's got no army, no airport, no public debt, and yet it's one of the wealthiest, most stable, and most industrialized places on the entire planet. So the question is, how did the absolutely unlikely Principality of Liechtenstein even happen? To get our heads around this, let's just start with a number. That's about 150,000 US dollars. This is Liechtenstein's gross national income per person. Per person. That puts it right up there with the richest countries in the world, just a stone's throw from Monaco. This kind of wealth is just one piece of a really fascinating puzzle. And here's where it gets really weird. This is the central paradox of Liechtenstein. On one side, you've got one of Europe's most powerful and active monarchs, an AAA credit rating that countries would kill for, and a really strong direct democracy. But on the other side, no army, no airport, not a dollar of public debt. So how on earth is this possible? To figure that out, we have to rewind the clock, way back, over 300 years, to a noble family with one very specific, very big problem. Yeah, our story doesn't begin with a nation or people. It begins with a single noble family, the House of Liechtenstein. Now, these guys were rich, they were influential, but they were missing something absolutely critical to be a real player in the Game of Thrones that was the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, the Liechtensteins had it all, or so it seemed. They were advisors to emperors, they owned huge estates all across modern-day Austria and the Czech Republic, and they had, well, a ton of money. But none of their land, not a single acre, gave them what they really wanted: a vote in the imperial diet, the super powerful assembly of the Holy Roman Empire. They were on the outside looking in, and for a family this ambitious, that just was not going to fly. So the key to the whole thing was this concept right here: imperial immediacy. You can think of it like a golden ticket in the Holy Roman Empire. If you owned a piece of land that was immediate, meaning it answered directly to the emperor himself with no duke or count in between, you got a seat at the big table. You got a vote. And getting that vote became the singular obsession of the Liechtenstein family. And that obsession leads to one of the most unusual founding stories of any country ever. See, Liechtenstein wasn't born from some bloody revolution or a glorious conquest. Nope. It was basically a real estate transaction. The family figured if they couldn't inherit or conquer a territory with that golden ticket, they'd just buy one. So where do you go shopping for a country? Well, you look for a motivated seller, right? And the lands that would become Liechtenstein were ruled by the Counts of Hohenems, and to put it mildly, they were a complete disaster. This quote sums it up perfectly. They were violent, they were tyrants, they were drowning in debt, and they had totally ruined their own territories. Their terrible misfortune was the Liechtenstein family's golden opportunity. And Prince Hans Adam I was a very shrewd investor. In 1699, he snatched up the lordship of Schellenberg. But that little piece of land wasn't quite enough to qualify. He had to play the long game, waiting another 13 years to get his hands on the neighboring county of Vaduz. Finally, with both territories secured, he went to the emperor, and in 1719, Emperor Charles VI gave his blessing, officially uniting them, and voila, the imperial principality of Liechtenstein was born. And if you want one fact that perfectly captures why they did all this, it's this one. Hans Adam I, the guy who literally founded the country, he never even went there. Not once. In fact, none of his successors would visit for over 100 years. This was never about finding a new home. It was a cold, calculated political power play. They finally had their seat. They were in the club. Okay, so you've bought yourself a country. Congratulations. But now comes the really hard part: keeping it. The brand new principality was just this tiny speck on the map of Europe, a Europe that was about to be torn apart by centuries of war and revolution. Liechtenstein managed to survive by being incredibly nimble, like a political chameleon. When the Holy Roman Empire finally collapsed in 1806, they secured their sovereignty by siding with Napoleon. When Napoleon fell, they hopped over to the new German Confederation in 1815, and when that fell apart in 1866, they made their single most important decision ever. Just 2 years later, in 1868, they declared permanent neutrality and completely disbanded their army. For good. Their last time sending out troops was during that Austro-Prussian War in 1866. They sent a small group of soldiers to guard a mountain pass in the Alps, and what happened when they came back? Well, it's become the stuff of legend. You see, they sent 80 soldiers out to war. The number that came home was 81. That's right, 81 soldiers returned. Apparently, they didn't see a single minute of combat, and along the way, they made a friend, an Austrian liaison officer who just decided to come back with them. Having figured that an army was just an expensive hobby that brought back more people than it sent out, they got rid of it, and that commitment to neutrality would be the key to their survival. And boy, was that policy tested. They navigated World War I, and right after, they made a genius move, pivoting away from a collapsed Austria to form a customs union with stable Switzerland. Then, during World War II, think about this. Despite being totally surrounded by Axis powers and even having Nazi sympathizers at home, they stayed independent. It was a combination of skilled diplomacy, that crucial Swiss connection, and maybe just being too small to be worth the trouble. So that's how Liechtenstein was born and how it managed to survive. But what explains its incredible modern success? Well, the answer lies in a political system that is just as unique as its entire history. The whole thing is built on their 1921 constitution, which created this idea of dual sovereignty. And this is not just some figurehead monarchy we're talking about. State power is genuinely, truly shared between the reigning prince and the citizens. And the balance they've struck is, well, it's extraordinary. I mean, just look at this balance of power. The prince has serious authority. He can veto any law, even one that people pass in a referendum. He can fire the government, dissolve parliament, but the people have equally powerful checks. They can start their own votes to pass laws, they can veto laws from parliament, and get this is the wild part. They have the constitutional right to hold a vote to abolish the monarchy entirely. Even a single town can vote to leave the country. It's a system built on mutual respect, held in check by the constant threat of the other side saying no. And what's the result of this strange system? Well, look at these numbers. In a world where trust in institutions is at an all-time low, you have 93% of people in Liechtenstein trusting businesses, 91% trusting the police, and an incredible 89% trusting the prince. This system, which looks like a total contradiction on paper, creates a ridiculous amount of stability and confidence in real life. And all that political stability has created the perfect environment for incredible economic prosperity. It's really important to bust the myth that Liechtenstein is just about secret bank accounts and fancy postage stamps. Today, almost half of its economy, 43%, comes from a highly specialized, high-tech industrial sector. Think precision tools, dental products, that kind of thing. It's a powerhouse of innovation. So we end right where we started, with a country that really seems impossible. It was bought for political ambition, it survived centuries of chaos through clever neutrality, and now it thrives on a truly unique balance of power between a monarch and his people. Which leaves us with one final big question to think about. Is all of this just a bizarre historical accident, a 1 in a billion fluke, or does this tiny Alpine principality actually hold a lesson for the rest of us?